Hello, my name is Candido Crespo, Visual Arts Education major, class of 2006. Joining me is Philip Flynn, class of 1981. Philip, you have over 40 years of experience in nonprofits, first as a fundraiser, then as CEO for multiple organizations spanning from the healthcare industry to a zoo. But I want to travel back in time for a moment. Tell me the story of how you arrived at New Paltz.
SUNY New Paltz.
Ah,
I transferred to SUNY as in coming in the beginning of my sophomore year. I had started college. I was a kid from Long Island and New York City. Went up to Crane School of Music in Potsdam, part of the SUNY system. I was not for me. I also didn't have the discipline. The class that I entered with Crane School of Music was much more interested in practice, practice, practice. And I was a little bit more interested in growing. So I was looking for a different atmosphere. And I was just breezing through the catalogs. We didn't have the computer internet in those days. I breezed through the catalogs and I see SUNY New Paltz, which offered a degree, which is relatively new, in music therapy. I said, hey, that sounds like a pretty cool idea. So I did it sight unseen. I put in my application, was accepted as a transfer student, and arrived in August of my sophomore year. And I can tell you honestly, from the moment I set foot on the property, I was in love. Aesthetically, I was in the Mid-Hudson Valley. It was the mountain was there. Mohunk was staring you in the face. When I got to New Paltz, Main Street was cobblestone. It was still not paved yet. And all of downtown was what was, you're a graduate. So the stories you hear about old New Paltz,
yeah.
I could kind of tell you they're mostly true. We were all hippies and, being 90 miles north of the city and, 20 miles south of Woodstock or 25 miles south of Woodstock. And it was just this whole culture of musicians and artists and very relaxed and a very true liberal arts college. And I fit in right away. For me, academically and as a musician, I felt I was in the right place. And so I started my career there and continued on through. In fact, upon my graduation, I went to work for the university. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
I see it from different perspectives. But as a student, it was the right place for me to be, and I got the most I could get out of it.
Okay, I need to first, being a young man from Long Island, I need to know what part of Long Island prior to you attending New Paltz were you living?
Yeah. I came directly from Nassau County, a small town called Floral Park.
Oh, I know it.
Sandwich between Queens and Garden City, and so
I know it. Some small little great restaurants in that town. I visit there often. I grew up in Brentwood. That's where I grew up. Yeah. Before I attended New Paltz. And in 1981, did you see yourself here where you currently are? And what has the journey been like?
Nowhere near. I was a graduate with a bachelor's degree in science in music therapy. And I did my internship, which was part of my program, but would actually introduce me to the job, much like a student teacher. And so I landed an internship in Kutztown, Pennsylvania, at a hospital for the mentally disabled. Okay. And I did my music therapy. And as soon as I was done and came back to New Paltz, I had a conversation with some faculty members and with administration, who I was close with and had developed a professional as well as personal relationship with. And I said, this is just not for me, man. I just don't like the way it's run. Mm-hmm. And so they said, we got this program. You could do your master's in healthcare administration. So I said, okay, that's cool. I'd like to look into that. So that's what brought me back to New Paltz then as a graduate student. And then as it turned out, because he said, hey, listen, this was Ken Berta. Dr. Ken Berta was vice president of student affairs at that time. Okay. And he said, listen, why don't you come on and work as a dorm director? Because as an undergraduate, you had been a resident advisor. And so, why don't you apply for the job? And I did and got accepted. And so I started off with Dr. Eaton, David Eaton, who just retired this past year. David was my mentor in terms of leadership and organizational design and working with people. And Ken Berta was there, and Dr. Alice Chandler was there. And so I took my experience as a student freshly graduated, brand new alumni, and took that into actually working for the college. So I think it's safe to assume that my literal love affair with SUNY New Paltz was 8 years long, and it was hard to leave when it was time to leave. But my experiences and the things that I learned, both academically, as an artist, as a musician, have traveled with me throughout my entire career.
So I was a resident assistant and then a senior RA while I was on campus, but never held or pursued the title of dorm director. What was that role like?
Oh man, that was I was like a year older than some of the students I was working with, But a lot of the, they use the word success, but a lot of life is just dumb plain luck. And so they had just brought in this brand new director of residence life, guy by the name of Lorimer David Eaton the third, LDE. And David, he was my first professional position, because he taught us to be professionals. Right. As working in, we didn't use the term dorm director, we were residence hall directors. And we were taught about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how people progress. And he took very special interest in getting us to work through what it's like to be. Most of us were 21, some of us were 22 years of age. And we're working with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. And knowing what, I was going downtown with some of the students that had been my classmates. And so trying to make that bridge and that break and do that separation. And with the support of Dr. Ken Berta, really, it had an impact for me. I can only speak of myself. It had a real big impact for me. And so, but I still took classes. Didn't matter if it was undergraduate. I was working on my master's degree. But now I'm working for the university.
Yeah,
they're paying the bill for my graduate work, and as long as I took credit hours, that was very cool. So I got to take classes that just because I wanted to take them. The history of the Mid-Hudson Valley for a history class, statistics for idiots, because I was a musician. And so I just took classes, worked full time, took classes, worked my master's in the evening. It was. I mean, you see the smile on my face.
Yeah, I see it.
My friends from New Paltz today are still my best friends in the world. I had the best experience I could have ever had. I only hope my kids, my oldest one went to a large university, and he didn't get that. And my daughter's getting it at a smaller one, and I'm hoping that she gets those compounds. And my youngest is about to start. So I only hope for them the experiences that I had.
Just mentioning your children, have you been able to express your stories and your experiences when you attended school while they were in the process of applying and attending college?
Yes, I did. And the three of them don't like the cold. So they said, we're going to stay a little bit closer to home in Florida. So their latitude, their line of demarcation was Atlanta, Georgia. They only wanted to look as far. I said, come on, we'll go up to New Paltz. We'll check it out. It's gorgeous. You're going to love the Mid-Hudson Valley. And they were like, Dad, it snows. No, I ain't doing it. Just, okay.
So you were there on campus in 1989. You received your educational leadership and supervision degree. How did you end up selecting that program?
Well, again, the healthcare administration had been removed from SUNY New Paltz as a graduate program. It got moved to Albany, and as a student, I had the choice. I could transfer up to Albany, or I could stay at New Paltz and move into. And they actually gave a choice, and one of them was educational supervision. And I met with my faculty advisor, and I met with my faculty mentor, Dr. Peter Bagley, who was choral director. But Peter was very important to me as a faculty member. I trusted his opinion. He took time and talked with me, always talked with me. And I said, I got these career choices I got to make, and I'm really happy here at New Paltz. And he said to me, listen, I can't advise you what to do, but I can tell you this: in life, when you get someplace doing something, if you're not happy, then why the hell are you staying there?
Right.
So if you're happy here and you have an educational program that is going to support maybe your future goals, maybe not, maybe it shifts, maybe it won't, why don't you at least try it? And he was right, because the alternative was transferring up to Albany. Nothing about Albany, but I was happy at New Paltz, and so I took the program at New Paltz. And because I didn't do student teaching, because I was not a certified teacher, my career path was to be, believe it or not, a school district superintendent.
Right.
That was one of the parts I would get from the program, was to be able to be certified as a superintendent. And then I finished the program, but decided that the college life was for me. So I wanted to work in the universities and colleges. So I was already working. I was working in student affairs. So I stayed with it and began to play.
Your career has spanned multiple industries at this point.
Right.
What would you say it has been, in your experience, some of the most rewarding moments, or maybe some of the most challenging?
Well, as a nonprofit, when you choose, or it chooses you, when you move into a nonprofit, you get to see society at its absolute best and its absolute worst. It's not a political discussion, who's a right or who's a left, or who's a conservative and who's a liberal. None of that comes into play. What comes into play is that you're seeing policy, and you're seeing the best of policy and the absolute worst of policy. Oh my God, it's a freaking food. How much paperwork do I have to do to get this food out the door? It's just the nature of the beast.
Right.
And I've worked internationally, so I've seen some really great programs and some really horrendous ones. But all in all, the most moving for me has been, at the end of the day, I get to put my head to pillow knowing that I did a little bit more for the world than I expected the world to do for me. And so that was a great lesson and a philosophy that I've kept forward. And that started at New Paltz as a student, working in, I always go back to David Eaton, and I always go back to Peter Bagley. In chorus, I'm involved with these masterpieces, absolute masterpieces. And Peter's always pushing and focusing us to do just a little bit better, so that it gets more from us than we get for ourselves, which is tied directly right back in, though, because that's when I'm at my truest, is when I'm giving it all, and then transferring that over to administration in my career, and wearing a shirt and wearing a tie and wearing a suit. Now I don't have to do that anymore, thankfully. I'm the sage old man, so nobody expects me in a tie, and it's Florida, so I wear a sports jacket. But being in that moment and realizing that when I'm asking staff and when we're making decisions on what program can we actually take on, I always ask staff, this is going to be, we have to give more of ourselves, because our job, our career, our passion is to provide help for the world. There's a Jewish expression, tikkun olam, and it's you got to save the world. So it's been pretty cool. It's been a great career. And I still got more to do, so I'm not ready to hang it up yet.
It sounds like you do have much more to do, and by all means, you have all the enthusiasm that we wouldn't want you to stop. So we're talking about careers, but let's for a moment, let's step aside. I want to know about passion projects. Are there things that you've worked on along the line that you? Of course, it's tough finding. Sometimes it's all about finding time to do these things, but let us know. What are some passion projects?
Finding time. I don't want to say I disagree. Finding time, because the bottom line is there's never enough time. There's never enough money. There's never enough of this, or there's never enough of that. So at the end of the day, you just say this has to be done. And again, I work in a profession where what I'm trying to work for is the other person's benefit. So the most passionate program that I had is when I was working international. I was the CEO for a program called Doctors for the Poor. And we had what started as bringing physicians down to Haiti, Jamaica, Guatemala, San Salvador, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Belize, and doing these basically drive-by clinics in Cité Soleil in Haiti, in Tumond, and in Kingstown in Jamaica, and just doing the best we could with medicine. And so we'd bring these private physicians in for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and fly them back out on Sunday. And they would do their skill levels. And we set up these little clinics. I use the term drive-by. We'd come in with our little white trucks, big vans with big giant our emblem and logo on the side. So people began to know who we were and what we were doing. And then out of the blue, I had a donor say to me, well, maybe we should put up something a little bit more permanent. How about a clinic? And so that took me into another whole realm, because now I'm dealing with the government. And if you think working with the U.S. government is a pain, working with an international government is just beyond comprehension. So because who owns the land? And you can't tell who owns the land. And this is actually a dump. City Soleil is in reality where the garbage dump is, and this is where you're setting up a clinic. And what kind of security you're gonna have. At the end of the day, I've just always, what's made me be happy is that, listen, that's a problem to worry about tomorrow. Today, this kid is suffering from malnutrition, and this adult has got lesions, and this person has got asthma, and we can get medicine there, and we'll figure it all out later on, and let's just get it done today. So the trade-off of that is, again, from lessons at New Paltz, particularly from David Eaton, is if you're going to be the painter, then you're going to be, let me rephrase that. If you're going to be the chef, then you need a sous chef who's going to be paying attention to all the details. So look for someone who thrives on your passion, and somebody who will pay attention to dotting an I's and crossing the T's. He says, because you'll fail if you try to do both. You'll just be miserable. And he was right. And so I've always been lucky and fortunate to have people by my side who would listen to the vision or the vision, so to speak, and what we really wanted to do. And they just let me just, like a bull in a china shop, just begin to push that boulder up the hill, and they'd be right to my side, dotting I's, crossing T's, making sure this official knew that I really said what I said, but kind of meant it this way, and making sure the language barriers were taken care of. And so it was great. We wound up building 11 clinics spread out through 17 countries, and it was
wow.
It was really cool. It was really cool.
Wow, that's major. We briefly passed and mentioned the word success, but it seemed like you weren't about to provide an answer for that. I actually am going to press now. I'm going to press the issue because I'm interested. I'm interested in people's definition of the term success.
Sure.
And given your experience, I'd love to know what that word means to you.
Success to me is tied to fulfillment. It's tied to being where you are and being really happy at it, because that's truly the only way you get really good at it. Japanese masters spend 40, 50, 60 years slicing sushi just a particular way, rolling it just the way, and aren't considered a master until they've got their 50 years in. They don't do it to be successful. They do it for fulfillment. Any artist does it for fulfillment. And if success will follow. It could be however you want to measure it. I don't measure it by monetary. I measure it by I have an impact. And it's an impact that I'm doing something that hopefully 3 to 5 other people are going to get a benefit from. And again, I work in a nonprofit. I work in social services. So I'm talking about food pantries and medicine for people who don't have it. And I've worked with Alzheimer's foundations, and I've worked with ALS foundations and cancer foundations. And so it's just sort of self-explanatory when you say the word fulfillment, that they're getting more than I can provide in. And that's really, for me, so that's my definition of success. It's what I teach my kids. I said, listen, I don't really care if you're whatever job you choose to do, if it fulfills you, then you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
And it'll be defined by maybe the people that you meet. I'll close it by saying this. When you work in a nonprofit arena, you never get rich by Wall Street's definition, but you get really wealthy in human experiences. And who would want to trade that? I certainly don't.
Well, there should be no surprise then. I was actually going to ask you how you define fulfillment after this. Okay. but that was a 2-for-1 special. So
there you go.
And I hadn't, in my own definitions, I hadn't considered how related the two could be. I think I was defining them and giving them their own separate definitions. But after listening to you, there is major consideration for the two being going hand in hand, really.
Well, I just think, listen, you're you, as you've expressed to me, you're teaching, right?
Right.
So I'm going to make a guess here, having, I'm 61 years of age, that teachers are the most underpaid profession of all the artistic professions that there are. I mean, you all should be seven-figure salaries. Schools should be palaces. Bottom line, that's my view of the world. So when you're young yet, but as you get older and you see your experiences, I guarantee you, trust me on this, there will come a point in time where you'll see that success and fulfillment, the true, is really, it's the same thing. It's the only, you can't have one without the other.
Right. Right.
The world according to Flynn. So.
I'm a firm believer in the role of mentorship in our lives. Well, that and community. What advice would you give to our viewers and listeners who are interested in your field of work?
Volunteer. Just volunteer. It doesn't matter what it is. It's whatever's important to you. People volunteer to work work with the Humane Society and with puppies, and work for the blind, or whatever speaks to your heart. It's like, why choose one piece of music over another? It's because I like Chopin. I'd rather play Chopin more than I'd like to play Bach. I have to play Bach, keep my fingers moving, but I want to play the Chopin. The same thing. So in the nonprofit world, just volunteer and spend some time, and you'll learn a lot about what's going around you. And then if you decide, I really want to work in this, then don't just take the job because it's offered or it's open. Look to the administration. Trust me on this. Look to the administration and ask yourself just a pretty basic question. Can I detach my name, my soul, my being to the person who's in charge here making these decisions? Because I want them to teach me. Because there's just things you never know until you're actually doing it, and until you've failed 50 times working with a county commission to try to get funds for a specific problem, or you're working with a big donor for 2.5 years and suddenly that donor goes right, or you set this whole system up and then the technology changes and you feel like you just wasted all that money because the technology made it easier, and didn't have to build all this infrastructure. But you learn that from administrators and leaders in the profession, and find a good one, in your cause that you're doing, because they're out there and they love volunteers and they love newbies coming through the door, and you just plant yourself, and you have to have that 15 seconds of bravery, and just say to them, listen, I'm new in the job. I know we're not going to interact on a daily basis, but could you give me some time, maybe like once a month, just to talk with me about it and how the world works from your perspective, so I can learn. And I've never met a nonprofit leader who doesn't say, come on into the deep end, the water's fine. And you will develop that mentor relationship, and you'll decide, this is the type of person I want to be, or I have other ideas, but I'm learning something. It's truly the value of a mentor relationship. And nothing pleases a mentor more when someone introduces you and says, this is Philip Flynn. He's been my mentor. That's a fulfillment. That's a success right then and then. So yeah, it happens all the time. So my advice would be is pick something that sings to you, that really sings to your heart, and just volunteer and express, listen, I'm looking to do this. I mean, really do this. Make a living at it, feed my family with it, and be here every day, pushing this boulder up the hill. Is there a position for me? You'd be surprised how many times we say, oh, absolutely, man, hire this person.
What is your relationship with music now?
It's personal. I am older and my arthritis does kick in. Right now it's I blast the stereo. My big magnaplaners are going, man. You know anything about speaking? My magnaplaners are going on my small grand piano, and I'm blasting away, and a lot of Billy Joel these days. I don't know. I'm just in that phase right now. Some Billy Joel, some Tom Petty. And out of my 3 children, my daughter, the middle child, is musically inclined. So she'll grab an instrument, whatever's just happened to be laying around. She'll grab or she'll sing. And so it's more family oriented and so forth. So it's personal.
Okay.
But there's nothing like putting on the headphones, right? Putting on Carmina Burana or putting on a Mozart and just listening to those highs and just just, yeah,
Wow.
I'm there. I'm there.
That's beautiful. For my own selfish reasons, I want you to talk to us a little bit about your zoo experience.
Oh,
I think
say that again?
about your zoo
My
experience.
zoo experience, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I decided in a career in nonprofits, you can be a specialist. And what I mean by that is generally, and I'm speaking generally, and I'm only speaking from my own experience, in the nonprofit arena, you get to be the chief cook and bottle washer pretty much by 5 routes. You know, you get out of school or you do a job and you suddenly see there's a problem in the world and you want to solve it. So you become the founder. If you're the founder, right, then you're the head chief cook and bottle washer,
Right.
and you hire people as you want. Second way is that you're a specialist. So in a social service organization, you know, or you're either a teacher there for the organization or you're a social worker. And so the CEO retires or leaves and goes on to do something else. And so the board of directors, because every nonprofit by IRS code requires a board of advisors, the board says, hey, you know everything about this. Let's put you in charge. And so you rise to that position. Or you're a retired politician. You know, you served on the county community. You know everybody that lives there. You know who the movers and shakers are. Suddenly the hospital foundation needs a new director and they bring you in because you know who the big donors are. Because it's money, it's a business. And so you get that way. The other 2 ways are you come to the system as a client who's been moved and shaked by the whole organization. And so you rocket, you know, to the top, or you come in like I did. I came in as a fundraiser, which means I learned the business of the organization. So I approach nonprofits. It's a business. We don't make a profit. Our money goes right back out into the community, but it still has to turn a profit. Can't keep running red ink. And how many times can you stick your hand out, right? We got to stick your hand out every day. So Central Florida Zoo's longtime executive director had just left and taken another position. And the zoo had some financial troubles. And so they were looking for someone who didn't know anything about animals. And trust me when I tell you, I didn't know a darn thing about the difference between this rhino and that rhino and what made this giraffe different from that giraffe. And how come we got 3 kinds of zebras and they all look the same to me? I didn't know anything about it. But I did have an understanding of how the finances worked and how donor engagement worked. And I knew how to lead a team. And so the board of directors took a chance on me. And so I was there for all of 4 years. Working with 113 staff members who every day worked with animals that could eat them or bite them and sting them and they die. And we had, tourists coming through the door. That's a zoo. So people are coming through every day to see these animals. They want a custom experience. And I got to play, man. And I'll answer this question because everybody always asks me, well, what was your favorite animal in the whole zoo? And I would say the porcupine. I think the porcupines. I said, yeah, you watch those animals and they are so beautiful. And if you take one of their quills, because they drop their quills all over God's green earth, it's like fall happening during certain points of the year. And you take the quill, and I would bring them home to my kids and with an inkwell and say, okay, hand them the quill and say, I want you to use this instrument and write for me the first paragraph of the Declaration of Independence using this instrument. And so they get like fourth letters in and with ink and quill, and they say, oh, Dad, this is ridiculous. And I'd say, hey, brother, understand that for like over 100 years, this is how literature was written. Right. Before the printing press, we used quills, and they came from these animals or bird feathers. And so learn this art, man. This is how calligraphy was developed. And, so it all stemmed back from the fact that I would sit for hours with coffee and watch the quills, watch the porcupines just move around the property. It was really kind of cool.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I wrote down some names while you were talking. Berta, Eaton, Bagley.
Yeah.
But when I think about my time at New Paltz, I think about the people who impacted me. You've shared that. Is there any standout faculty or staff member maybe that you haven't mentioned or you want to expand on that had an effect on you?
Yeah, for me, it was, it goes, David Eaton was my administrative mentor.
Okay.
But as an undergraduate, when as an undergraduate, we all go through those moments of, what the hell am I doing here? Oh my God, I don't want to be here. I want to go home. I want to just quit and do this, do that. And anything from girlfriend troubles to parent troubles to money troubles to just feeling like I'm insignificant. And at those moments, I don't know how or why, but I'd always bump into Dr. Peter Bagley, who just, for me, I'd see him walking across the campus, and I could see it in his eyes. He was focused. He was running music in his head. I could see him conducting in his head. And I would say, Dr. Bagley, and it was like a switch went off and another switch came on. Phil, how are you? What's going on? You don't look so good. Come on, let's go get some coffee. And he would sit and listen and talk to me. And it wasn't that he was the only one of my faculty members like that, because New Paltz was just awash in faculty. I'm sure it still is. I hope to God it still is, where they just wrap their arms around you, not in a paternal way, but in a safe way. Talk to me. There's no judgment here. Just talk to me. And I told them flat out, listen, I got a job offer to go. I took the test from the city, God knows why, to work for the New York City Sanitation Department. And the pay looked great. The benefits were going to be fantastic. And I'm not feeling like I'm fitting in again. And I'm kind of off the road. And he just listened to talk. And I think for 2 or 3 hours, we just kind of talked it through. And he said, where are you happiest? Well, even though I'm miserable, I like waking up here. He said, well, stay where you're happy, man. Tough it out. You'll be okay. You need something, call me. And it was that sort of relationship. So yeah. He was the standout as an undergraduate. Absolutely.
Well, Philip, this conversation can go on forever.
Forever. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Taking time to reminisce and exemplifying what it means to soar higher.
Listen, man, good luck to you. Thank you for doing this. And anybody in the New Paltz community, I wish you all the very best. Take care.